it really feels like my life has been one, one step after another, one opportunity after another, and it's just I guess I'm just crazy enough to believe in myself enough to actually walk through that door of opportunity, and we're here now.
Hey everyone, welcome to Tracer Burnout. I'm Roger.
And I'm Dan.
And we are on the road again. It's been a while.
It has.
Last trip was in Charlottesville.
This is our first road trip that hasn't gone to Virginia.
That is quite true, yes. Yeah. We went in the opposite direction. We went south of the border.
To the other Carolina.
The other Carolina. So we are in the state capital, Columbia, South Carolina. We are visiting with a creature of the forest. We met with one of our rare unicorns a few weeks ago. With Rusty, who was our submarine commander. That was kind of a rare find. But we have another rare find of this particular creature, Dan. We have an elected official with us today.
Cue the
dun, dun, dun.
So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we'd like to introduce you to Senator Jeffrey Zell. How you doing today, sir?
Good, sir. Thank you for coming down and visiting us.
Yeah, man. This is great.
Yes, sir.
We first started communicating with you and your team probably late summer last year, correct. And it was in the lead up to your it was campaign season, right? So there's a lot going on. So we didn't want to try to squeeze you too much because we know how busy you are. So now that we've got a little bit of breathing room, we're able to come down here to Columbia into your really amazing office. This is a great opportunity.
Thank you.
My compliments to your wife on these chairs.
Oh, yes.
Because these are ridiculously comfortable.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he greeted us with donuts and coffee, which is always appreciated.
That's right. Absolutely.
Not that I need it.
But. Well, I appreciate y'all having, extending the grace that you have and giving me the patience. And it was last year, full sprint. It's still sprinting, but as you said, we have some breathing room, and I'm just so thankful that you didn't let that fish off the hook. So
yeah, absolutely.
You're here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, okay, Dan, kick it off.
So we'll get started the same way we always do. Does your family have a history of service?
To some degree, yes. The men in my family, I traced it back to actually Virginia. You mentioned Virginia. My great-grandfather, 4 times removed, I found participated, maybe 5 times removed, participated in the Revolutionary War, and there's been some significant participation in just about every conflict since then. There was a law in my family for the men serving in the, sort of the sexual revolution era of America, post World War II baby boomer era, that I think we may have lost our way a little bit, but my brother and I and others in my family we stepped up and sort of got us back on track. So my brother and I have served probably, a total of probably close to 40 years in the Air Force. And so something I'm very proud of. And yes, sir.
Awesome.
You grew up here in South Carolina?
No, I'm actually I'm a transplant. I'm from Ohio.
Okay.
And so that does cause some consternation in the circles I'm in. There's, not to get too far off track, but there is some nativism in politics, and not being from here actually gives me quite a advantage. I don't have long loyalties to people. I don't owe anybody anything. It sort of came out of nowhere, and just made it happen. As you said, Roger, I adapted and overcame, and figured out that politics was another way to serve, and continued doing that. But
well, that's one of the things about military life, right? I mean, you go all over the country, all over the world,
that's right.
But the place you choose to call home after your service, that says something about that area.
Correct, absolutely.
So, I would think that you chose to settle here with your family. That would be a credit.
Absolutely.
To South Carolina.
Well, I'd like to opine on that for a moment, because that's actually something a very, very acute perspective on this. And not to go too far on a tangent, but it's actually been quite studied, and you gentlemen being military retirees understand this. There is this sort of phenomenon in military service members where they, at some point after they sign up and leave their hometown, they sort of lose that connection to some degree. Mm-hmm. And when you near the end of your tenure in the military, whether it's separation or retirement, folks really have a lot of anxiety about where they're going to go, because their home state, that situation isn't necessarily the place that's high priority where they're going to, where they want to be. And so it does cause some anxiety. Well, folks here, there's something, there's special people across the country. There's, my hometown, my home state, I love it dearly. It's a part of who I am and all that. But folks down here in South Carolina, there's just something very special about them. Yeah. And there's a huge population of veterans in the district. In fact, my home county has the highest population of veterans per capita than any other county in the state of South Carolina.
I believe that.
So it's around 14%. And so, we honor service here. And so, the moment we landed in South Carolina in Sumter, we were just literally greeted by strangers, right? Yeah. Praying for us and welcoming us, inviting us to their churches and to their homes. And so it was for the first time in 20 years, I really felt at home. And so it was quite an easy. Now, whether I was staying in Sumter or some other part of the state, that was a different story. But we knew that we were going to stay in South Carolina. They made it easy for us.
Yeah. So how did a kid from Ohio end up in the Air Force? And whereabouts in Ohio?
Central Ohio, Columbus. If you're familiar,
that's my folks
you're from
my
Michigan,
folks are from
right?
No.
Okay.
No. My dad grew up in Worthington.
Oh, no kidding. We grew up very, very close. In fact,
Hannah. So.
My dad was born in Franklin County in Columbus, and I still have friends that live in Gahanna and Grove City and all those places. And so how I got here was really how a lot of people in the military get, find themselves serving, is I grew up pretty hard. I mean, with a lot of challenges and, poverty and dysfunction and drugs and the typical sort of gutted out middle America small town, when the jobs left and industry left, in come the drugs and in come the hopelessness. And we had about a generation of that. It was my generation. And, a lot of my friends didn't make it out. But my twin brother and I, Patrick Zell, we made a pact to each other where we, as I mentioned earlier, speaking about my grandfather, we were going to, there was some real sort of some problems in our family tree that we saw as far as people not stepping up and leading their families. I think a lot of it was cultural. I think some of it was of the times. But generationally, we felt that impact, right? We had to live those repercussions. And what that felt like and looked like was we didn't have a lot of food in the house. We were on welfare. We were dependent on the system. We had no real decent education to get out. And so I was, as a young child, to answer your question, I was looking for the first metaphorical train, in this case, airplane, out of town. And I wasn't looking back. And so we did that. My brother led the charge. He joined in 2001, right after 9/11. And so he blazed that trail for us. About 8 months later, I joined the Air Force. And I can remember the exact moment I decided. It was in San Antonio when I saw him salute for the first time. That moment still to this day gives me chills. And so I knew it was something I wanted to do. It was really, it wasn't about me. It was about serving. If you can recall, at that time, America was going through and the world was going through a major change, right? We had just had the largest terror attack on American soil ever, or at least in the last 100 years I don't know if we have a greater one. But America was united for that moment in time, and that was something I felt that was a very powerful motivation. So I joined the Air Force after him, and then 20 years later, sort of.
Yeah. So why the Air Force?
Good question, and this is my absolute answer. I didn't want to shoot anybody, and I didn't want to get shot at.
That's fair. That's fair.
And I told myself
we did it all wrong, man.
That's it. What's funny about that though is I actually joined the Air Force with a job reserved as a security forces.
The other SF.
Yes, and that was something I absolutely wanted to do. In fact, before the Air Force, I was applying to be a police officer in Columbus, Ohio, and that process was like a year long, right? And so I was 20 years old. I didn't have any real, I had a lot of good work experience, but I didn't have any real references or resources, and so I was just sort of hoping a prayer, trying to figure it all out. Yeah. And after I applied to the Columbus City Police, there was, I think it was probably about 6 or 8 months by the time I got that first letter back from them saying you meet the minimum qualifications. But for me, chomping at the bit, 6 months was way too long. So in between that time, I went to MEPS and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But with that security forces job, when I went to MEPS for the security clearances and the physicals and all that.
Did you have to do a psych eval laterally?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And they did so I passed all that stuff. I'm not sure how, but I did. And then they found a hearing loss in my left ear to a degree that excluded me from security forces. And so then I had to choose, and so I went through the book and I found what might look to be the most interesting, with the sort of the broad, because I get bored easily, and
amen.
Right, I just need something, just as a young man, all young men and women, all young men, we need to
particularly men.
Yes, we need to do things with our hands. We need to go climb the metaphorical monkey bars and fall off and hurt ourselves. Right, that's how guys learn. Right.
I thought he was going to say climb the monkey. I was like, I haven't heard this one yet.
Oh,
where's he going with it?
We'll figure out what that means. Yeah, we're going to make that one stick.
We'll call back to it.
So anyway, just I picked ammo, munitions, career field just because it made sense. It was very broad. It said there was 9 different elements and different sections of the career field that you could participate in, and that was true. And so it was. If I had to do it again, I might have picked a different job. And I know my ammo friends are gonna, roll their eyes at me a little bit. They know what I'm talking about, though. Maintenance in the Air Force. It's very political. It's very. I'm not going to speak ill about anybody, but it's very political. And once I got to that level where, I was a viable, candidate for, higher rank in the senior NCO Corps, it got so political that I couldn't really stomach it anymore.
Well, we'll get to that. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit.
All right.
It's just after 9/11 and your brother joins, and then 6 months down the line you join. Nobody in your family at that point had served.
Correct.
But now both of you are in uniform. What was your family's reaction to that?
I think they expected it. They sort of expected the Zell brothers. We were always sort of just unique that way, I guess. Not really special, but we were angry, right? We were very angry, and because of our situation, and we were looking for a way out.
Yeah.
And they all knew it, right? And we were very vocal about it and try to prepare people, our family, for that. Hey, when we cut that cord, you may not see us a whole lot in the future. And so we were really very aware of that. And so, it was he and I, and we just thought we were going to live boldly, and this was the way we were going to do it.
It's interesting. Most of the people we talk to, and I mean ourselves included, everybody's got their reasons for joining, right? But a lot of people will join to get out of a particular situation.
Sure.
It doesn't always have to be a bad situation. Like I didn't have a bad family life.
Sure.
I wasn't trying to escape. It wasn't like that. I was just kind of a competent kid who was in decent shape but didn't know what he wanted to do with his life, and I kind of stumbled into the Army, and it was a good fit for me.
Sure.
It's just interesting that it's kind of a great paradox that the Army both, I think in a lot of ways, could have saved my life.
Sure.
And prevented me from going down a path that I shouldn't have gone on, while simultaneously putting me in some of the most dangerous possible scenarios you can even imagine. So. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good point. And it's not to say that the military is just a charity case for poor kids.
Of course,
right?
Oh, of course not.
There are, I know people that have sold businesses, literally thriving businesses, to join the military. But there are, if you look at sort of the recruitment efforts in the Air Force. They used to, and I'm not sure if they still do it. I know that the Air Force recruiting has gone in, sort of gone array the last several years, just like all the branches. But they used to really target rural farming communities where there wasn't a lot of economic.
That's the recruiting base.
Yeah. That's correct. And so now I think that they sort of shifted away from that a little bit and are focusing on the cities and all that. And that's, it is what it is. But it changes the culture, right? And good or bad. That's I'm sure a little of both, right? But there's what's so great about the military, and this is where, to your point, Roger, is I often tell people, a poor white kid from little town America with no real way out, on a daily basis would sit, metaphorically and sometimes literally, would sit at a table and have lunch with, a young black farmer kid from the South, or a poor white kid from the inner city, or a gay Islander. Yep. Right. So the point is that it really exposes you to the world, and all its variations and everything else. And there's such a lesson in that, and it really sort of, and to speak, the term of the warfighter, it really opens up your aperture about what you can do and what you understand. And to be honest, I don't think there is a better life lesson than travel. Regular, consistent travel. Yeah. And so it's been very beneficial. It's clearly been beneficial to you all.
Yeah, we certainly agree. We have talked about that.
Perspective is a recurring theme on this show.
Well, good. Keep banging that drum, because we've got to, people got to know. They don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell us what a munitions airman does.
Okay. And munitions airman,
and I mean, I'm taking this all the way back to the beginning. So like basic training,
sure,
and your advanced training, to learn your job.
I will.
What is that?
Okay, so big picture, 30,000 foot view, an ammo troop is essentially, well, it's an ordnance troop in the Army. But we don't do shred outs like y'all do, like secondary MOSs, things like that. We are a primary AFSC and Air Force Specialty Code. We are a primary job, and that's what we're pigeonholed into. But 30,000 foot view is we warehouse, test, transport, account for, expend, not physically expend. Some on occasion we physically expend, but we do all the sort of accounting when a bomb is dropped off a wingtip of a F-16. When that pilot comes back, we say, okay, that bomb's not there, and we go through the accounting procedures to make sure that bomb is cut off record and accounted for. But really, to be honest, and it's glorified warehousing and garrison. In AOR, it's there's a little bit in garrison stuff depending on what base you're at. Al Dhafra being one of them. I was just going to say this. If you're at a deployed location, don't bring up, I don't want to hear about award packages, right? I got to be honest. And that was my last deployment, literally, when Trump ordered the drone striking. And I'm getting off the topic here, but I want to tell this. I was in Afghanistan in 2019 and into 2020, so right during COVID. And that was right when, if you recall, in December, President Trump ordered the killing of Qasem Soleimani. And we were there. Just Shaw Air Force Base was there. I think it was the 77th Fighter Wing was there. I believe who I was with, and we were just flying regular conventional munitions, and they were going to Winchester. They were just having really, as much fun as a pilot can have.
Winchester means they're having fun.
Yes, they're expending everything, right? They're going out fully loaded and come back with nothing. And so, but right when that drone strike happened, that's when Iran started doing their thing, sort of driving their vehicle-borne missiles up to the border of Bagram and everything else. And we had to get out of town because we didn't have any air cover or we didn't have sufficient air cover for those missiles, and we had billions of worth of aircraft on that ramp, so we had to get them out. So we went down to Al Dhafra. So the dichotomy in mission is what I'm getting at. We went from crazy, balls to the wall, conventional munitions, conventional air war, air to ground stuff, right immediately to dropping no munitions, writing awards packages and everything else. And so it was a difficult transition for an ammo troop. But that probably answers questions an hour from now. But I just wanted to share that with you.
Those were wild times with
the
Suleimani. Yeah.
And so that actually, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
So when you gentlemen were in, did you do much time in that AOR, or did you go forward, or what was your experience like?
So Iraq and Afghanistan both for me. Dan's got more Afghan deployments than I do. Mine was 05, 06.
Okay. Ooh.
But speaking of Suleimani, I remember when I was in Iraq in 07, 08, I was down south in Dakar province, and that was where Suleimani and all his boys were ratlining all the EFP munitions and all that. And all that was getting ratlined into mostly the Greens on the Baghdad through the southern area. So we were down there trying to break up all those.
And that's when the Afghan nationals it was what they call it, green on blue or green on green.
Well, I mean, that was persistent. Yeah.
Right.
I lost a couple friends to some green on blues.
I'm very, very sorry to hear that. That is the most cowardly act. And there's a special place in hell for those people.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Honestly, most of those green on blues, you have to imagine that the threats and reprisals those guys are under.
Oh, absolutely.
To their families and stuff. I mean, I'm not condoning what they did.
Correct.
But you have to understand there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's right. I agree with that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you went off, where was your basic training?
Lackland Air Force Base.
Lackland? Okay. Yep. So, when you went off for basic training, had you ever been away from home like that before?
I have, and yes, I was and this sort of my experience in life leading up to the military. Joining the military was very easy for me, and here's why. Home life wasn't great, right? It was broken, just like way too many others. But I was a Carny for a very, very long time.
What?
Let me see your hands.
Small hands.
They're regular hands.
Smell like cabbage.
Yes. So I was actually, and you may not know this, so give us some nuance. There is a hierarchy. I was a concessionaire, right? So there is a level. So I sold food.
Okay.
All right. So there's levels to this. So
he's being a politician.
Yes. Well, I couldn't have ride grease under my fingernails and serve corn dogs to people, right?
Enough,
so there was definitely and there were good people too, but I'll tell you, I've seen more. Side note, I've seen more like law enforcement raids searching for known drug dealers and murderers. And back then, if you wanted to be sort of the joke was if you wanted to disappear, you joined the circus.
Yeah.
Well, that was true. And so it was they probably still do it today, where if you're a law enforcement officer, you want to catch some people, go to the fairgrounds when the fairgrounds are closed, and just go see what's happening. I'm sure you might find a person or two that's hiding out.
Noted.
Right. So it was anyway. But there's levels to it. I was a Carny I sold food from age 12 to 19 every summer, all summer long. So I was in a different city every week. And it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. It was unbelievably demanding and physical. It was unhealthy in a lot of ways. But I was 15 years old, and the reason why we did it was if I didn't, we wouldn't have electricity in our house. We wouldn't have. I didn't have clothes for school, and that's what it was. The owner of it he was a business owner in Columbus, Ohio as well. He really cared about my family, and he made sure that we were taken care of, but he never gave a handout.
Yeah.
He would make you work for it. And as a 16-year-old making $700 under the table, right, every week, but believe me, I was producing some big money for this guy. And this was 30 years ago, so it's not like, I didn't know any better at the time. There's probably some tax law broken there.
Child labor laws.
Probably. Yeah. But when you're hungry and starving and have no electricity in the summer or in the summertime of Ohio or the wintertime of Ohio, you're gonna make things happen.
Yeah.
Right. So tax law was not my concern.
Yeah.
Eating was. So I think that's so. Anyway, so being a Carny, I think really allowed me to sort of sever ties a little bit year over year until it was the big one, the Air Force, and it was just such an easy decision at that point,
Okay. So before we move on from that, Carny question.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
What is one Carny secret that you can divulge to the audience? Like, are the games actually rigged?
They're totally rigged.
Oh, yeah. Stuff like that.
Yes, 100%. So the balls are deflated. The rims have no give. Yes, there are. It's clearly all about. It's like an insurance. You take in more than you put out.
Yeah.
But absolutely. As far as secrets go, I can. I'll tell you, I made the best corn dog officially in Delaware County, Ohio, and the Little Brown Jug horse race. I won a little award for that.
Nice.
25 years ago.
I'm probably not the only person that feels this way, but I'm not big on hot dogs.
Yeah.
But I will destroy some corn dogs.
Oh yeah.
It's all American, right?
It is.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, purely. Absolutely.
It's good stuff.
Okay. Back to the Air Force.
Yes.
I'll probably have more Carny
No,
questions.
keep them coming, man.
After
I'll
the
probably
cameras
think
are
of
off.
some stuff too, I'm sure.
Okay. So was all your training done there in Lackland? Or was it just your basic and then you went off to get
Yes, it was. So basic training obviously is in Lackland. That's where the majority, if not all, of basic trainings go through. And then tech school was at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is about 3 hours north of Lackland. I believe about 3 hours north. And it's still today, to this day, it's one of it's where Air Force sends most of its maintenance type career fields for their training. They have it's one of the most robust training environments for an aircraft maintainer, probably in the world, to be honest. And so, yeah, whether it's ammo to aircraft maintenance, again, there's like different shred outs for aircraft. They'll go to different bases and stuff, but. I don't know of a single ammo troop that has not, or a weapons loader or fuels troop that goes anywhere else other than Shepherd. So it's really where the bulk of it all happens.
Okay. How did you take, coming from the Carny lifestyle, how did you take to the military?
To be honest, it was because of the work was so demanding, and the my boss, his name, he's deceased now, and he came with a lot of baggage. I'll tell you what, we're none of us are perfect, but he was probably the most influential man in my life. His name's Bob Hurd, and if it wasn't for him, I might be in prison. I don't know where I would be, but I'm certain that I wouldn't be here. And so, despite all of our flaws, there's goodness in people, and he helped raise me up when and believed in me when others didn't. He could have tossed me away just like so many other kids are tossed to the side. So, no, but because of the work was so demanding, and he was so demanding, it's such a high level output. He was extremely serious about his reputation, his product being sausage sandwiches and corn dogs, but he would not let me undercook, overcook. He would not, if it didn't look right. He was very critical. And so with that, I immediately went in the Air Force and excelled. It was like, just like that.
That's what you needed.
That's correct. And it was nothing else. I didn't know what I was doing. I failed every day in the Air Force in the beginning. I still do. But but what I learned quickly is, it's, and this, and you two, I'm sure we're one of these guys. The folks that have the most failures are usually the ones that try the hardest, right? Right. You never fail if you never try, right? And so I was trying to do every little job I could to learn as much as I could, and I failed at every one of them, right? And so I was really down on myself about that because 6 months prior, I was any job I had, to be honest, and I'm not bragging, I just worked as hard as I possibly could. It wasn't out to do anybody else. I just needed to outdo myself. And so I still, to this day, I carry that that perspective, and to my chagrin, to be honest, sometimes I probably go too hard when I don't have to. But to answer your question, it was it was easier than probably most had it. And so I won a lot of awards. And again, I wasn't chasing any of that stuff. I just immediately separated myself from the pack because of my work ethic.
Yeah, and that focus and drive had already been instilled in you.
That's right.
Whereas for most people that join the military, it's something that they learn along the way.
That's right.
While they're in uniform. So yeah,
That's right.
You kind of had a leg up there.
I did, absolutely. And looking back, I'm glad I did. It was hard, and life could have been a lot easier, but it paved the way, and it hardened it hardened me for the next big fight. And so, I mean, people call me senator now, and I'm still, that's weird to me, right? But like that, what that means is I get to help people at a level and a reach and a depth that I've only ever dreamed about. And so if it wasn't for that incessant work ethic and desire to just help people like me when I was a kid, right? I've always wanted to be, there were some people in my life as a kid. I remember, we lived in government housing, and I'm sorry if I'm all over the place here, but just to give you some context, we would have people from church come over. We wouldn't have any food for days in the middle of the winter, right? And, the last thing we ate was, we found back in the day, adjusted for inflation, we'd find a handful of change, and we'd walk a half a mile to the local convenience store to get a little Debbie snack cake or whatever, because that's all we had to get. I mean, and hopefully the place was even open, right? That was our life. And there were people that saw that. And even though we felt trapped and like no one cared, there people did. And so, on occasion, probably more times than I remember, people would show up with boxes of food, churches, unannounced. And I always thought to myself, I always wanted to be like them, right? I wanted to be somebody that could give back in a way, not just a box of food, but like hope. And that to me was, because that's what they did for us. They may not know it, but they gave us hope that people cared. And so I always wanted to do that for others in the greatest possible way I could. And that's what drove me to this job. To me, that's what drove me to the Air Force. That's what kept me in the Air Force, because I got to be honest, just as you all people have this idea, the military is this, this guts and glory all day, and there's no hardships and all this, and that's not it. The day-to-day grind in the military is like any other job.
They call it the service for a reason.
Yes, right? And you're not going to get rich on it, and you're probably going to walk away with busted knees and some screws loose, and right? Like I'm describing all of us right now.
A few literally, yes. Yeah.
So anyway, that was my motivation.
Okay.
I'm sure that wasn't the question, though, you asked.
All right.
Tell us about your first duty station. So you show up, you're out of your advanced training. Where do you go, and what's that like being a noob?
Okay, so I go to being a young guy from Ohio. I only had a couple decent trips. I just didn't have a lot of money or time, and so I got an assignment to the third maintenance group, and I looked on a sheet, what is this? And so I back then I Yahoo'd it. There's no Google at the time, right? But I Yahoo, right, or whatever.
Yahoo!
Yes, I think it's still around, right? They do finances or something. Anyway, it's weird how that all worked out, but I Googled it, and I found it was in Alaska, and I thought, I don't want to go to Alaska, right? Like, I'm done with the winters. Winters weren't fun for me. Like, some people, they think snow. Like, I love my southern friends who are like, oh, you grew up in Ohio.
So cute and romantic.
Yes, let's go skiing and make snowman and all this. And yeah, let's do that too. But also, usually about month 3 into the gray winter, the gray lifeless winter, you start to say, I'm not sure if I love living in the winters anymore. And so there's a little bit of romanticism to that I think we all can understand as adults. And so I thought, I'm done with winter. And I went up there and absolutely fell in love with it. I was a young guy. My brother was already in the Air Force close to a year at that point. And so, he's telling me he was actually here in South Carolina at Shaw. It was his first duty station. And he's telling me all the cool things about the Air Force and the not so cool things about the Air Force back then. And my experience was very different, right? And, so we go up there, and I just sort of fell in love with it, fell in love with the big travel, as I call it, But at first it was just, my travel was mostly out of necessity. Mm-hmm. And this one was, it was, of course, necessity. The Air Force was going to send me where they want me to go to work. but it was something that I was experiencing the extreme nuances of the place, not just as the tourist traps, things like that. I was seeing life, what it looked like for people who lived in one of the harshest places in the world, and they were doing it. They were thriving
and having fun,
and having so much fun. Exactly. And so I realized, like, maybe my fears of, and I wasn't fearful, but just young and uncertain about where,
Anxious.
life. Yeah. It really sort of broke all that up. That sort of, it sort of broke up that mentality. And I said, I'm going to go see the world. Right. So I'm going to volunteer for everything I can. I had learned that the Air Force provided, and that was one thing, I think that was the thing I needed the Air Force to do for me, was to prove to me that it provided the stability that I was looking for. Yeah. Right. As a young guy who was just working his tail off to get anywhere I could get to, just past that, I was looking for stability in my life, because my life up to that point was really just chaos. And so they did that, and that's when I got comfortable, and I started volunteering for just about every deployment. And now I didn't get them all, I wish, but I did get some pretty bad ones, and I got some very good ones too. And I'm not complaining about any of them. I'm happy how it all went down, and I'd certainly do it again.
The 3rd Maintenance Squadron?
Yes, sir.
Is where in Alaska?
Elmendorf, and that's in Anchorage, Alaska. Okay. And so it was cool. I was there for 3 years, did a bunch of fishing. Again, single guy with a job and insurance. First time I ever had insurance on my own. It wasn't state funded through welfare program, right? It was the first time in my life where I actually had some means. And so, man, I had a lot of fun. And then 3 years later, I deployed out of there. At the end of that 3-year period, the last 6 months of it, I deployed my first deployment to Ali Salim in Kuwait.
This is 05?
This is, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. 05. It was before. Have you been recently?
To Ali Salim?
Yeah.
No, I haven't been in years.
Purgatory.
But I.
Oh, yeah. The Rock, as they call it.
I remember the saying.
So my job over there is, they call it something different now, but I did TCN duty, so third country
nationals.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so all I did was watch, folks, take out the trash and build buildings and everything. And so the dorms that you might be used to now, if you were there, we were watching those dorms being built while we were staying in tents with rats, right? So
yeah, I
right?
certainly didn't get to stay in a dorm. I was put in a transient tent.
The worst of the tents, actually. Oh yeah, with 30 other people.
Well, you're only supposed to be there for 12 hours or less. A week and a half later.
Absolutely. We know how this goes, right?
Well,
yes. So
purgatory.
It is.
Okay. Yeah. So that was towards the end of your time there.
Yes, sir.
How long was your initial enlistment for?
6 years.
6 years. Okay. When you came down on orders to leave Alaska, did you try to stay, or because of that traveling bone, you were ready to go on to the next spot?
I was ready, and it was, I had felt, again, I was single. I wanted, there was just so much I wanted to do. I wanted to buy a house. I want, without a cosigner. Like, these are, I gotta be honest. Like, I don't know if other young people are thinking like this, or I hope they do, and they should if they're not. But when I was first joined, I wanted to buy a car and pay it off as soon as I could. I wanted to buy a house, just not to say I own a house, but just to do it, right? Just to do it and say, I've done it. It's not like this uncertain, fearful thing anymore. Yeah. It was like I was putting myself in those situations to have to navigate through them, because I knew that on the other side of it, I'd be better, stronger, and ready for the next big thing.
You wanted the responsibility.
Yes, and I did it. I sought it out.
Setting sort of milestones or goals for you that as you look back on it, they're not really that big of a deal.
Right.
But coming from your situation,
correct,
those things are huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right. Just even signing up, even like taking a college course for most kids that lived in, And it's better now, thank goodness. There's a lot of programs out for them, and I'm very interested in that, and I'm helping them as best I can in this position, but in funding and reach and everything else. But for young people of that mindset, that impoverished mindset, because it's first and foremost, poverty is a mindset. I believe and then the physical consequences thereof are what we see on the news and in our streets and everything else. But first and foremost, it's a mentality that you can get past if you want to well enough. If you see examples of success outside of what your experiences are, then that gives you, like I said, if you recall back to what I just said, those people that bring us food boxes, right? I wanted to be like them, right? I wanted to be someone that could actually give back and help those people that needed it. And so that's where, looking back on it now, I think there was a bigger story that was unfolding in my life. I couldn't see it at the time, but it was the motivation, right? I'm not sure if that answers your question either. But I may answer some question that you might have.
You can see God's hand in everything in retrospect, right?
Yes, absolutely, right? I think we all can if you're really looking and trying to be objective. But yeah.
So where were you off to now?
What next?
Yeah.
I don't know. God would tell me.
No. I mean,
like today, launch?
I mean, after you left.
After Anchorage.
Oh, gotcha. I got to be honest. Like, I really don't like talking about myself a whole lot. It's something that anyway. After Alaska, I went. Right after that deployment to Ali al-Salim, came back about a month later, and they don't do this anymore. They don't cut it. The timeline's this close anymore. But after about, I think, a month or two after I got back from that deployment, I went to Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico.
New Mexico, yeah, I know that one.
Where I met my now wife and mother of my child and my best friend. And sometimes she doesn't call me her, but I'm kidding, she does. But
the land of enchantment.
Yes, that's right. Believe me, and I will tell you. Have you been? Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful place, super unique, and it's a beautiful place except for where I lived. And that was Clovis, man. And it's just the nature.
I know Clovis.
It's just it's high. It's arid. It's almost a mile high. There's not a lot of greenery and shrubbery, and I was
very brown.
Very brown and tan.
It's
right?
like Ali al-Salim.
It's a great,
in a lot of ways.
Yes, it's like it's a great place to fly airplanes and train, right?
Except in Canada, you're still paying taxes.
That is true.
That's true.
That is true. I will tell you though, the quality of life there, the buying power is really good comparative to some other places. So I was able to afford more with the same dollar that I got in someplace else. So what I did with that was, again, fast forward from my previous base, I wanted to buy a house. Right. So, and that's sort of what I was chasing, is I was trying to line up like what my future was going to look like for me after the military, while also trying to do the best I could while in the military.
That's the right way to do it.
And I think partly I had some good mentors and leaders in the beginning, and they told me this. They said, don't define yourself purely by your military service, right? Because this day is going to end, and that it's going to come faster than you think. And they were right. And if you don't prepare yourself for it, you're going to wish you had. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of guys and gals, dear friends of mine, that kick themselves every day for not preparing better for it. I do as well. I could have prepared so much better. But still, it was on the forefront of my mind. So, I was, like I said, I was trying to prepare for after service while serving in the greatest capacity I could while I was in. And so I think I struck a decent balance there. I still wish I would have taken school more serious and things like that. But hindsight's 20/20, right? But so yeah, went to Cannon, found my now wonderful wife. Her family still lives there. We visit often, a little less often than we used to, simply because of the demands of this job. But it's our heart's there too, And even though it may not be the most picturesque place on earth, the people are absolutely charming and loving and welcoming, and so it's just an extension of home to me. So Cannon.
So had you been promoted at this point? Are you a junior NCO now?
Yes. So I made, and y'all in the Army, and I'm sure you probably know the Air Force rank structure is quite different in the way they promote. And so it's a little, I'm not saying more difficult. It might be as far as, the opportunity to promote. I think it occurs less than the Army. And I could be wrong about that. But I think it's easier to take rank in the Army as well, is my understanding, right? So usually right? Is that true?
I mean,
we're all looking at Dan.
To lose it?
Yes.
It is not difficult to lose rank.
Okay, and I've heard that, right? Because I've heard, and again, this is all hearsay and secondhand knowledge, but I've had some of my closest friends growing up serving in the Army, and some of them, rest their souls, they have committed suicide. Some of them won't talk about their service. Most of them are thankfully doesn't deal with those things, at least that I'm aware of. And if you do, talk to me. Right, we need to talk.
Sure.
And so, but anyway, what was I talking about? What was the point I was trying to make? What was your question?
I don't even remember.
We were talking about you were a junior NCO.
Oh yeah. So I made rank actually very quickly. My first enlistment was 6 years, and if I would have made E6 1 year earlier, I would have made E6 in my first enlistment, and that's burning it.
That's pretty fast, yeah.
And almost too fast, because there was just a lot of knowledge gaps, and I recognized that at the time.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, I'm just going to keep working hard. Whatever comes of it, and it did. And that the Peter principle, right? I had done well, and I still, it wasn't the technical aspects necessarily where I thrived. And I did well with that too, I think. It was the, I guess, the whole person concept, the whole airman concept that the Air Force was promoting, right? Service before self, all that stuff. And I felt, listen, we all fail at that every day, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm a saint and did it right and all the time, and I still fail regularly. But I tried, and I think that was the difference. And so I was able to make senior airman below the zone, which I'm not sure if there's an equivalent to that in the Army, but which allowed me to sew on senior airman 6 months early, which then put me in a testing cycle for staff sergeant, so E5, and I made staff my first time. And so I was a staff sergeant at 4 years, E5 at 4 years in the Air Force, and then it took me a couple times to make tech, but again, a lot of folks, and this isn't comparing against them, but it's difficult to do. So what I told myself was, all these knowledge gaps exist that I'm aware of, and all these different jobs. Remember, harken back to the description of what ammo was. I knew, just looking at it, I knew that I probably had to be proficient in some of these key areas. Yeah. Not all of them necessarily, but key areas. And I was burning through the rank way too fast to actually have that experience to be effective.
Yeah, the proficiency.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I hit the brakes purposefully, and I hit the brakes way harder than I thought that I did. And so it took me. So I was a tech sergeant for about 7 years, and then I made E7 at 15 years in the Air Force, and so, but I could have certainly pursued more promotion and probably would have gotten it based on the trajectory and the statistics and everything, but that's not something I wanted to do. I wanted to be and that's, I think, even with this office, like, I have the title of senator, but it does, none of that matters unless you can do something with it, right? And that's what it comes down to is I could have been a chief, but I would have been an ineffective chief, right? So would I have been more effective as a master sergeant or a chief? Master sergeant, of course. So that's where I felt I was going to, where I needed to be, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, yes.
So you were an E5 before you left Alaska?
Well, I had a line number for it, and then I PCS,
so
and
you were promotable.
Yes, I was promoted, just hadn't sewed on yet. Okay. I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 months into Canada I sewed on.
So how does being a munitions NCO, how does your job change once you go from being a junior airman to now being a member of the NCO Corps?
Well, for me, again, it was an easy transition. For a lot of folks, it's not. And I think largely my personality, I'm very, probably to a fault. It's probably a criticism as much as it is as a praise. I often say to people, the very thing that got me here is the very thing that people criticize me for, and that is just brute force honesty. And to be honest, and I say this too, and
squad attack.
Yes, and I'll tell you, and it's not to be over. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just, it's just sort of baked into the cake. I have to turn that volume down sometimes, metaphorically, right? I live in the South where folks really do value decorum and politeness, and so do I.
We'll call that the indirect approach.
Yes. So I had, and that's how I always wanted to be in the Air Force. I just want to be. I'm not naturally. I don't like conflict, and so. What got me here was that sort of just brute force honesty and work ethic. And so when I got here, I really had to take that in perspective and realize if I wanted to help people, I couldn't burn the bridge that I needed them to walk across, or me to walk across, right?
Of course.
And so that was a hard lesson for me to learn, and I still struggle with it today, based on externalities. We'll just leave it at that. Influences and people who may not have the best intentions. Implying intent. To, people's lawmakers' decisions. Else. I mean, it's easy to look at a decision on a vote and say, this extremely complex issue, and say, you voted this way, so you must X, Y, and Z. No, that's not true. Yeah. And what I've learned very quickly that in that building over there, the State House, in the Senate chamber, it's full of good people of all different stripes and colors and experiences and ages, and these are good and decent people. Of course, it's a political entity, so there's game players and everything like that. All right, you turn on, and you know who they are because whenever the camera turns on, they're running towards it.
The most dangerous place in the world is between them and a camera.
100%. But generally speaking, a vast majority of people over there want nothing to do with that. They just want to help their constituents. I probably answered 5 or 6 questions that you didn't ask. So
we love it. No,
yes, yes, it is.
It's a discussion, not an interview. So it's true.
Yes,
it's true.
Okay, so what are you now that you're a junior NCO? You're at Carny.
Oh, yes.
I assume at some point you deploy again.
Not out of Cannon.
Okay.
I did deploy, and the reason for that was because of what was happening to that base at the time. So when Cannon was on the BRAC list at the time. And I'm sure you all know exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yes, yep. Being you say Fort Bragg and Pope.
So it is still Bragg because Pope was. Consumed by Bragg. So it's now Pope Army Airfield.
So
I
didn't know
it
that.
retained the name and then went to Liberty and now it's back to Bragg.
Sure, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But you know what the BRAC does when a base when the base hits that, and I get it. These are corporate decisions, right? You can't keep a base open that is spending $500 million a year and not producing the value that it once did or was supposed to. That's a corporate decision. I completely understand. So,
I'm laughing because it's funny. We're talking about politicians, right? When BRAC they were always blue ribbon commissions that were created by the politicians,
oh my gosh,
by former politicians.
Oh, yeah.
So when they made these decisions, the current politicians could have clean hands and be like, "Oh, sorry."
Exactly. Well, there was.
Yeah.
You know exactly what it is. It's very political. Fairbanks or Eielson Air Force Base in Fairbanks, Alaska was on the BRAC, and I saw what that did, and I'll tie that into what it's in a second, but I saw what it did to property values. I mean, immediately people started like flooding the market with homes, and so it that is a risk that military folks, and that's something I hope that that if I ever make it to that level, if that's what God has in the charts for me, BRAC reform will be something I'm very interested in looking at because it's so disruptive to a community.
Oh, it can destroy them.
It does, right? And fortunately, because immediately there's an immense amount of pushback. So how that ties in is I moved to Cannon Air Force Base from Elmendorf, and Cannon was on the BRAC list. And it was on the BRAC before I even got an assignment there. So I'm thinking, this makes no sense. Why would they inbound PCS, or move somebody to a base that's potentially closing, right? And so, being inquisitive and not understanding, one thing I always try to find is if I don't understand something, I need to understand it. So I start researching. Well, I was staying in billeting on base, and every weekend there was these pilots and these AFSOC people and these Army Special Ops people and everybody else that were coming and doing site surveys at Cannon. And I was there maybe a month or two. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, why would they send me to a base that is likely going to close? Which, by the way, the governor at the time, Governor Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. Governor Richardson and his folks created this Operation Save Cannon campaign where they had earmarked a bunch of money, state money, to run. I don't know if it's state money, maybe, but a lot of marketing and advertising to keep the base open, and they did. They were very successful. But while we were there, that first month or two, all these special ops guys and gals were coming in doing surveys, and so I would ask them. I'd be sitting at the chow hall or the bar or wherever it was, in line at the commissary or whatever, and just chatting them up, and I'd say, hey, what y'all doing this weekend? What y'all here for? And I'm trying to listen to the nuance, right? Mm-hmm. Not just what they're saying, but what they are
not saying.
Correct. And they were telling me, oh yeah, we're going to go downtown, look at some apartments. And apartments? What are you talking about? Right? Yeah, we're going to look at some investment properties. And I'm, interesting. Well, why would these guys and gals, right? So that's what they did, right? And so I'm thinking, this may be a risk, right? Remember, I want to buy a house. That's something that's on my mind. I want to get through that process. And so what the BRAC did is it suppressed, unfortunately for a lot of folks, it suppressed the property values in Clovis, New Mexico to a degree that a brand new, I didn't even sew on staff yet, a senior airman with no cosigner could buy a house. And I did, with almost no credit established, right? And so I bought a house, and then it came off the list that property value increased about 35% in a month, right? I say a month, probably longer than that. But it just almost immediately, yeah. I have major equity in a home that I had just purchased. And so, and that's what I was hoping would happen, right? So I stayed there, did well, both professionally and personally. Like I said, I met my wife there and my future in-laws, which are amazing people. And so it was just like a really cool launching pad, stepping stone, whatever you want to call it. For me, I had done a lot of firsts there. I bought my first house. I bought my first Harley. I found my wife, right?
You finally grew up.
I finally grew up, and I had the measurements and the statistics and the certificates to show it, right? So, but it was just something I was really interested. I wanted to be not the first to do it. I just wanted to be honest, I wanted to show my nieces and nephews and those that were going to come after me is, listen, you're not defined by your situation unless you believe it to be.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you start.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, I think it certainly didn't hurt, right? So, but anyway, it was a great experience. I was there for a short time, and then learned a lot about just humility. To be honest, I had to tone down some of my really hard perspective on life, and most of that was based in just lack of experience and hardships. And so I realized was that everyone is facing a battle. Every community has its issues, right? And I'm not special in that way. And once I started realizing that, that's when I started looking at the world a little different. And I realized, again, when I mentioned, I want to help people, and I can't burn the bridge that I need them to walk across. Yeah. And that was when my perspective started to change on that.
At what point did you decide to re-enlist?
Oh, that's a good one. Every time I re-enlisted, I didn't want to re-enlist. I got to be honest. I mean, there was a part.
You are absolutely not alone in that.
Oh, I know.
Indecision is a decision.
It is a decision.
But because your initial enlistment was 6 years.
Correct.
And that is, I don't know if that's pretty standard for the Air Force.
It is.
Okay.
Well, they dangle this carrot in front of you. They give you 2 stripes. At least 1 stripe, possibly 2 stripes for serving for 2 extra years on enlistment. So it's a carrot, of course. And I took that carrot, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. So at about, I don't know. I mean, you got to Cannon after 3 years. Your re-enlistment window opens at around 5.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
At what point before or around the time that your window opened, did you start thinking about it and doing your pros and cons?
Sure.
And do I want to do this? And then ultimately, what was the point that
key?
Took you over the line?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very good question. I think, and every time I re-enlisted, just like you gentlemen, that those circumstances have changed. At that point, I was madly crazy in love with this woman. She was often serious about, my wife is unbelievably intelligent, and she has all the certificates to prove it. But she was doing not runoff, but she was working towards becoming a medical doctor, right? And she had all the degrees, and she was making all the right contacts and getting all the right experience. And then we met, and it was, and I've always been of the mind where, I never, and I told her this, that I never wanted to be a regret, right? Like, I would rather us into this relationship and you pursue your dreams and me mine. But I never want to be a point of resentment for you. I want her. So, but I think because of that, she reciprocated that back. And so it was getting around the time where I had to re-enlist, and likely I was going to PCS. Oh, I didn't tell that. Let me tell you, I missed this one point. Cannon. The reason I didn't deploy out of Cannon is Cannon was transitioning from an air combat command base, F-16s fighters, to an AFSOC base, and So basically, what they did is they PCS'd everybody out that was attached to an airframe, right? That their job was directly attached to an airframe. But I was able to stay back because I had just gotten there maybe a year or two before. Others had been there for decades, some of them, and so anyway, and they wanted to leave, and I didn't. So I got to stay and transition ammo and help the base, at least from ammo perspective, at a low level, move. We got rid of. We had to ship out all the air-to-air stuff. Yeah. All the stuff didn't make sense for
realigning.
Right? Correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got through that, and then so I was sort of not stuck, but it was a very unique experience in its own way. But I really started to learn. And my bosses gave me a lot more responsibility for the rank that I had, just because it was necessary. Everybody wanted to go, then the ones to stay back had to do more, and I knew that. And so I really started to get actually interested in my career field for the first time. And so it made the decision a little bit easier, but I also had that personal side thing happening where, I had my now wife and I had to make a decision, do we continue this relationship and knowing all well that it would get likely in the way of some of our personal ambitions. But it was cool because we respected that from one another. And we said, we're going to make it work. Right, we're not going to get each other. We're going to support each other in our dreams, and we've done that, I think, and we've done it not always in the best way, but we've done it. So I'm contending with. I don't love the Air Force at this point. It's a bureaucracy, and I'm not a big fan of bureaucracies. Not at all. You can ask anybody in that building over there.
Join the club.
I know.
We have T-shirts.
I would like to buy one of those T-shirts. I will wear it over there. But so I'm contending with the fact that I don't like the necessarily enjoy the bureaucracy of the Air Force at all. But also with this really bright future with my now wife, and then also with the financial stability. So it really was sort of an easy decision. It was the subsequent re-enlistments that were a little more difficult to make.
So when you re-enlisted, how long did you re-enlist for?
4 years. I tried to max out every time just because. Okay. You know how it goes. I mean, you know how this goes. You get ready for that re-enlistment date comes up really fast, and all the things that you wanted. Not your story might be different, but a lot of stuff that I wanted to do, I didn't do. And I thought, well, I don't want to get out without a degree. I don't want to get out without these certificates.
You feel like you're going to miss something?
Yes. And so it's just like, okay, and partly for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to re-enlist again, right? But it really, I'm so glad it did, because I wasn't ready to do those things yet, right? I wasn't ready to finish my degree yet. I just wasn't there, I was, so, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we'll continue on down that road, but first, let's go ahead and take a break.
All right, perfect.
So you re-enlisted for 4 more years. Did you re-enlist to stay at Cannon, or did you want to continue your travel journey?
Well, in fact, we talked about carrots. Air Force likes to dangle carrots in front of somebody, in front of their people, and this is exactly what they did. They gave me an assignment to Dover Air Force Base, and one that has almost no ammo troops, so it's an extremely difficult assignment to get for my career field, and the only way I could take it was to re-enlist. So
is that post one that's really sought after?
It is.
Okay.
I mean, it's their bomb dump consists of about 20 people, and at Cannon, at its lowest, and this is after all the munitions were gone, all the airframes were gone, all the aircraft were gone. We had about 40. Right, so Dover's a cargo aircraft base, and port mortuary and all that. So there's not a huge need for my career field there, and so it was a base of preference assignment that few people get, and I did it. And it was just one of those bases that it's so sought after that you take it, and so they made it easy.
So both wars are going on. Double barrels right now, and you're at Dover. Did you ever have anything to do with the transfer of the remains or in any of the?
Yes.
Okay.
Not extensively.
No.
That's other career fields, and but part of our mission was to secure any sort of the personal belongings and effects of the fallen. And because sometimes and oftentimes actually the remains would be brought home with their personal effects, and oftentimes in those personal effects would be trinkets, ammo they found when they were kicking doors in, live ammo, and things that we didn't know about, right? Russian made stuff and everything, and so we didn't know what it was, so we had to secure it. And it didn't happen as often as you would think, because much of it happened on the front end before the dignified transfer got to Dover.
Yeah, there's the air movement officer and NCO should be doing all those inspections. I know because I did them.
Oh, really?
And you're supposed to go through and remove
That's,
all that stuff. But
sometimes
there's always that one fold in the clothing, or that wrinkle at the bottom of a sleeping bag.
That's correct. That's right. Well, and I want to tell you thank you for what you've done. There's a lot of things that people see they can't unsee. And so it means a lot to me that you would, whether you wanted to or didn't want to, you did the job, and that's very. Seeing a dignified transfer on both ends, in deployed location, and I've seen many, and have participated in many, really informally, not just standing there just honoring and saluting. That changes you. It really puts in perspective why. And why you're there, and how dangerous it really is, And I've seen dignified transfers from our allied partners. Most of them were Americans, but so I was fortunate enough not fortunate, but in a way, I guess, honored to be a part of it on both ends of that transfer.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're right. Things do make it through the process, and that's where we would come in on the Dover side, pick it up, secure it, and it would just be typically it would just be an EOD disposal sort of. When they collect enough, they take a block of C4 out there and they blow it up.
Because the assignment is first, you were married at this point.
Correct.
You got married and then you went to Dover. Because of the small size of your unit and the, I guess, smaller mission scope.
Sure.
Do you think that was beneficial to really adjust to married military life? And I don't know if your wife comes from a military background or anything like that. So, I guess getting your married relationship off on the right foot. Do you think that being in a small post with a small scope, do you think that was beneficial for your?
I think so.
foundation?
I mean, I think that would be probably beneficial to anybody who's new to that world. Fortunately for me, my wife Christina, her father, I mean, she was born on an Air Force Base mountain home. Her middle sister was born at a base in England, right? And her dad was a 24-year master sergeant, crew chief on F-111s. And so she, that's what actually took them to Clovis before they took off and we became a AFSOC base. They were very used to. Now, my father-in-law, he didn't travel as much just because the F-111 world is just so small. He had about 4 bases that he could go to, so he was sort of landlocked that way. But when they got to Clovis, they set up shop. They planted their root, or they planted their seeds and allowed their family to stay in one place for a good amount of time. And so she was sort of used to it to some degree.
Yeah, but there is a difference between growing up in a military family and then marrying a service member.
Absolutely.
And then taking, I mean, there are some similarities, but there's a difference between being a kid and being a spouse.
Yes, and so I do think it helped in some ways. It certainly didn't hurt. But what it did, because I was of the mind, listen, I've seen so many bad marriages and then so many bad relationships that probably, that would probably fare better if folks were to fully commit and marry one another than these long-term sort of, what is that, common law marriage, whatever it is. And so a lot of my family members sort of lived, they just, to be honest, they wouldn't marry each other, right? And I always wonder, but, you could see the results of their relationship and it wasn't real good. So I was a guy that I told myself, I'm not getting married, I'm not having children, right? I don't want to contribute to the sort of the demise and furtherance of the demise of society until I was absolutely certain that person was going to be the right person. And so
the one.
Yes. And so every step of the way with my wife was and reciprocated too, was a test. It was one, but it was a sterile. It wasn't like I'm going to trip you up. It's just we were testing each other to see if we were truly compatible.
Yeah, compatibility and values are so important.
It is this probably the single most important thing. It's the thing that keeps people together, right? If you don't have those things, it's the thing that drives them apart. And so, I drug my feet on dang near every step of our relationship, and she'll tell you that. I jokingly say that she pursued me, but that's not what happened. She's way better looking than I am and way nicer and sweeter. But she was sort of primed for it. And so like I said, like in my mind, I wasn't, when I first went on a date with her, I was looking for markers. I wanted to see how clean her apartment was. I did this.
The kids call it red flags now.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, that's what I was looking for. Red flags.
Red flags, green
right?
flags.
I had an application in my mind with check boxes, and I was going down them. And so every time I check one, I say, okay, well, we met that step. Let's further these tests. And so, when we got married, I told myself before we got married, and just in a general concept, that I was never going to live. Not that this doesn't work for other folks, but I wasn't going to live with the person I married if I could help it. Right? When I committed, it was going to be a full commitment. I wasn't going to. And then once we got married, I wasn't going to have kids until we knew that marriage was going to work. And so it was really I was very regimented, probably compared to the average person. So, it worked. And it wasn't, we sort of massaged a lot of the uncertainty out of our relationship because we were very deliberate about it.
Yeah. Could be like how I was, which is you're looking for all the red and green flags, and you get nothing but green flags across the board, and then you get to the end, and you're like,
where's the red
Wait a second.
Right, who is this person? Right,
we're still married. We're about to do 17 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
You're making it work.
So, did you deploy out of Dover at all?
I did. I did a summer in 2010 in Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar.
You only go to the finest locations.
Well, that's what Air Force does. We stay at dorms. We stay in dorms, sir. Right?
Yeah. Not barracks.
We go to dining facilities, not chow halls. Right? Talk to a DFAC airman and call it a chow hall, and they'll correct you right now. Right.
Your closest Michelin-rated senior airman cook.
Well, I mean, there is some truth. Remember when we first said is why I joined the Air Force and not others? I didn't want to get shot at, and I didn't want to shoot anybody directly.
Says the guy that was also trying to go to the police academy.
Well, those screws aren't real tight, Dan. So right, so I'm complex.
So what were you doing at IUD?
Same thing. We were. It was sort of that deployment was unique in a way that I deployed out of a air mobility command base, and so they don't fly bombs, and right. I think the closest thing they do is they'll drop a GBU-57 bunker buster out of the tail end of a C-130, but they don't do traditional warfare, right? Not as we think in the munitions world. And so I would deploy to do nothing but chaff and flare, right? Countermeasures, because that's what, these big cargo, we had C-17s there. We had a squadron of C5M models, which is cutting edge at the time. I think they have a greater version now, but so it was all cargo. And they don't really do training missions. They just don't. It's almost all real world because of the requirement. And the limitation of and the need, they are sort of the supplier of goods downrange, and the need was so great that there was no time to train. Everything was real world, and so they would buttress AMC troops that were really good at chaff and flare with other units, and so I had tied into on that deployment a bomber unit out of South Dakota. I forget what base it is, but I'm drawing a blank right now. But
that's not. Is it Minot?
No, that's North Dakota.
Sorry, got my Dakotas.
I'll remember it in a second. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just drawing a blank, but it's a very common base. I have tons of friends there, but anyway, so they were flying B-1s out of there, and that thing is a engineering catastrophe, but it works, man. At the time,
we have evidence that the B-1 works.
Yes,
quite recently, as a matter of fact.
Yes, B-1s are awesome, but believe me, they are absolutely like 1950s and 60s technology.
I believe that.
So, but it's a maintenance hog, it's an ammo hog, and a fuel hog, and so I learned a lot about that. I learned it tested me in my job of chaff and flare management, which is extremely difficult to do, just because it's all over the world and you don't know where that airframe is going to go or what they're going to use and how they're going to expend it, where they're going to expend it. So it's just it's a tracking nightmare.
It's a logistics headache.
It really is.
Yeah. I don't know if we can get into the specific of quantities, not necessarily per aircraft,
right?
But what kind of quantities are we talking about? Like you specifically that you were managing? Okay.
I have to go back through the EPRs to look at actual dollar figures. But the biggest we manage the entire base aircraft countermeasure system. And Al Udeid has they have aircraft. I can't even tell you what they are because literally I can't tell you about them. Right? Yeah. We can't talk about them. And then we have all the way up to B-1s and KC-135s and F-16s. Drones. So it had dang near every airframe that you could get because it's a safe location. It's sort of central,
it's the jumping off point for a lot.
Yes, for war. For human, for troop movements. Yeah. It's a central hub for cargo.
It's MWE. It's men, weapons, and equipment, all centrally
all
located.
All facets.
Yeah.
So the big, and that was the thing as an ammo troop that managed countermeasures. in garrison, when it's only your home station aircraft, it's relatively easy. It's much easier, rather. It's still difficult. But when you start talking about in-transit aircraft, whole units and that's because, a whole F-16 or F-15 unit would come through. They'd stay for 2 days. They fly in sometimes they'd fly in with chaff and flare, depending on how they're coming through and what their diplomatic clearances were. Sometimes they wouldn't because of those same diplomatic clearances and security issues. And so we would have 15 out of nowhere with really little heads up. We'd have to have, just for example, 15 A-10s come through, right? Tomorrow, and then 3 days from now, they're leaving, but there's 2 other aircraft squadrons coming through to forward deploy. And so it really created this technical nightmare. No. It was very difficult.
Okay, this is probably something that with all the different types of aircraft there, mm-hmm. and talking specifically about chaff and flare, is the chaff and flare different for each aircraft?
Oh, absolutely.
So you're not just managing one type for every aircraft. You're managing a specific type for each different aircraft.
Yes. In fact, it's actually more than that.
And then each different model of aircraft as well.
And mission set, right? And here's what, obviously you have to prepare for the known and unknown threats in the area. And so, if we were flying anywhere near a hostile country that had a large and capable SAM, surface to air missile or ground to air capability, that would put our guys and gals in harm's way, we would have to prepare for that. We'd have to have certain types of, because there's a plethora of types of flare and chaff. Flare is the big one. Chaff is just sort of antiquated tech that we don't really use much anymore. But flare, we have stuff that produces no smoke. Yeah. We have stuff that produces no light signature, but will mimic the heat signature of an aircraft engine. We have that's $1,000 a stick. We have stuff that's like $20 a stick.
It also smells like potpourri.
Well, Roger. That's not good.
That's
that you
my
know
contribution.
That. Yeah, that's right. But you're right. But what we call it's a scowl, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a code. Essentially every aircraft would have a different loadout depending on what the ops managers needed for the threat, for the aircraft type, for the mission set, for how long the mission is going. All these things are included, and so we would have to pivot on the fly all the time and restuff chaff and flare mods. And that's just regular issues without any complications. You start getting into, maybe there's a squib or something or a flare stick or lot that had a problem at the manufacturer. Yep. Now you're talking about suspending
recalls.
Yes. Yep. So, and we have a lot of those, and you don't normally see those until you're in the AOR when they're actually using them out of the box on the airplanes.
So you track these things by lots and all.
Yes.
That. Okay,
100%.
Yeah.
And so, but to answer the question, it is extremely difficult, and the people that can do it, I have so much admiration for, because they did it a heck of a lot better than I did.
I don't know if the Air Force or any other service feels this way, but from my experience in the Army, there is never a lot recall until you've already loaded that ammunition.
You are 100% correct, sir.
That's how I was an artillery guy, and that's totally true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not just the Army then.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Artillery, very
That's
interesting.
how I got my start, yeah.
Every single case of ammunition that I've ever handled or opened was fine until about 5 minutes after I loaded it.
That's right. Absolutely.
And it didn't matter what kind of ammo it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, so the B1s I was talking about, how it's sort of at the time, it was designed for the capability of the time.
It was state of the art during the JFK administration.
You remember the back stab on it? Yeah. Well, what's unique about the B1 is it's chaff and flare mods. Well, its flare mods sit on top of the aircraft, so it sits down into it. That's very unique. The big cargo planes, you put it up in it, screw it in, and it fires down as it's flying. This thing fires its chaff and flare up while it's flying, right? So we had these big sticks of flare that probably, I think it's MJU 23. Don't quote me on that, but they're very expensive, heavy, and they're probably about 3 inches in diameter. And so if the B1 and if the squib didn't propel it out of its canister fast enough with enough force, if the pilot was flying at not the right speed or angle, it would come up and it would shoot out, and it would come and stick to the stab and then burn through the stab of the aircraft. It happened.
That could be a problem.
Yes, and it happened regularly. So, and this was a critical component, right? So there were times where we'd have to down the entire aircraft, and then all the lot of squib or flare that was associated, which usually meant, like you said, every airplane on that ramp.
How long does that stand down normally take?
It really depends. As far as the aircraft, that's more of an aircraft maintenance question. But it's the ammo disposition is the process is once we learn about it, it typically happens from a pilot calling in, squawking in, saying, "Hey, we got issues with this flare. It's not happening." Whatever. They come back, they recon, they get all that information to the sort of the nerdy engineers, right? And ammo and then aircraft maintenance, and then they will determine, then they'll start doing their research, and then we suspend it, we pull it all down, we physically change it out depending on what the disposition is and what the problem is with it is, and then it could be don't use this squib, use the same stick, different squib, put it back in, a day, and there are times where it's infinitely suspended, and usually the infinite suspensions had to do with some sort of aircraft maintenance or emergency or accident, right? Because if there was an accident, everything gets canned up, and it's treated as evidence until they can determine what it was. Was it manufacturer error? Was it pilot error? Whatever it is. Was it ammo error? I mean, did they load it incorrectly?
No.
And so, but once after that gets suspended that way, it essentially just gets partitioned off, marked, and then treated as evidence in an investigation.
Right.
But while all that is going on, right? And I mean, that's not something that you're doing. That's a different career.
Sure.
So after you've already packaged all that stuff up and set it aside for evidence collection or whatever, you're then immediate, because of mission capabilities and priorities, you're immediately loading a different loadout.
Oh yeah.
To get the planes back in the air.
That's right.
And then those investigator guys will come and do
That's
their
correct.
thing,
and our controllers, we have an element in ammo, and it's in our squad, in our career field, it's a requirement. And there's control centers all the way through the hierarchy of maintenance. We have our own, and our control centers are very, very good about listening. Literally, our ammo controllers are listening to the pilot on the radio, and so they're taking notes, right? And they're sort of hey, if something happens, metaphorically or literally, they're talking to the guy or gal in command and saying, "Hey, we're hearing the pilot squawk in and saying that they're having flare issues or whatever," right? And then that will then spur a conversation, a phone call, and then there are times where we would be out digging through our igloos and our storage structures, finding or getting the new ammo, the new lot of munitions that we're going to use while that pilot's still in the sky. Yeah. Right. And so we try to be as responsive as we can. There's always limiting factors, as you know. But when it worked out, it worked out well. But we always had that's what the Air Force is, just like y'all. Everything is a redundancy, and there's always a contingency to the contingency.
There's a reason for that.
Yes, because who said it? Sun Tzu. What would you say? He said it. Confucius, right? That the moment that I think Mike Tyson, the moment you get hit in the face is the moment that
Mike Tyson was everybody's got a plan
until they get punched in the face,
in the mouth.
Yeah. Yes,
with an F.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mouth.
Yes.
Well, Mike Tyson is also the one that said the internet has made people far more comfortable shooting their mouth off without getting punched in the face,
which is totally true.
Absolutely true. I deal with it every day.
I can. I have to imagine you're.
The philosopher
It's
Mike
hard.
Tyson.
Oh yes. Well, I mean,
If it's true, it's true.
I love the guy. I gotta be honest. He is a hero of mine.
Talk about a guy who had an interesting character arc too.
Oh.
Man.
I think there's nobody else that's ever going to be. The mold was broke after him for sure.
What's so funny is him and Evander Holyfield ended up being friends.
Oh yeah.
That's not really that weird though. Magic and Larry Bird were friends too. Well, I mean they still are, but they didn't start that way.
Well, I don't think Larry Bird was friends with anybody. He was the big trash talker in the league,
No,
Yeah,
he and Magic are tight,
and he was.
Larry was a big trash talker.
He's a baller though.
and he could back it up.
Yeah.
Oh,
But let's stay on course.
We're not here to talk about the Celtics.
No, we're not.
Dang it.
So how long was because Air Force and pretty much every service other than the Army has different deployment
10 times.
times.
10
Say
years. Yeah.
tenure.
Yeah.
The Army likes to send people off for a year to 18 months at
Yes.
a time. The Navy,
Yeah, and I'm sorry for
will
that.
do it for a month or so.
Sure. The first part. So the question, I hear a question in there. My first 2 deployments were 4 months, which really equaled 6 months. And Air Force time isn't always accurate, right? We're going to be here for 12 hours, right? It turns into 2 weeks. This is no different. So the 4 months, but give or take a month or two, and then about halfway through my career, the Air Force, which I always agreed with this, is that the turnover rate was far too great. Right. And again, it has a lot to do with aircraft maintenance and stress on aircraft. And it's not necessarily people driven, it's aircraft driven. But they determined that it would be far more cost effective to keep us there for 6 months, 6 month deployment. So that's the standard rotation now.
When did that change take place?
Probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less. But it was my buddies and my neighbors and some of my best friends were in the Army, and they served in the Army as long as I served in the Air Force. And they're just starting to retire now. There were many times, and this is why I've always, I felt like to some degree I dodged a bullet, to be honest, in joining the Air Force and this is no disrespect to the Army. In fact, it's a compliment to what you said, is they would deploy 12, 18 months, and you've seen it in the statistics where marriage rates were greatly impacted, right? Suicidality, career progression, mental health,
physical health,
right?
Yeah.
It was just, when I heard, and because I know that they don't really do the 18-month deployments anymore. I guess you can, but it's not common as it used to be. And so now it's 6 months to a year, I believe, right? On average.
Pretty much every set of deployment orders you get are going to say 6 months up to 365.
Okay.
But then after the 365, it used to, I don't know if it still does, or until the mission is complete.
Right.
There's like 3 sentences that
Sure.
basically sum up to, or until the mission is
Or infinite. They could, right, indefinitely. They could just say that. I get it. But I was just so thankful when I started hearing that our Army brothers and sisters didn't have to commit so much, right? Because it truly was, and I get it, every branch has its unique issues and everything else, but it felt really like the brunt of the sort of traumas, I guess, if you will. And not to disparage anybody or downplay any other branch, but it was difficult not to be extremely sympathetic to our Army brothers and sisters for what they had to sacrifice.
Given the nature of your deployments, and this is based on your experience, given the nature of your deployments, the length, what you were doing, did you see the same kind of tests on mental health that some of the other services have seen?
I'm not sure if I can actually answer that question with any sort of clarity. My general,
it's just your experience alone.
I think so, and I think as they say necessity is the mother of all innovation or invention, and that doesn't just mean MRAPs. right? Or ammo, or whatever it is, airplanes. That means people, right? That means how we test people, what we look for, pre and post deployment situations. But I did, later in my career, I noticed that, because, there is some overlap. There's always Army on a base. There's always Air Force, Army on an Air Force base. There's always Air Force on an Army base, right? It's just the nature. And so it's not entirely foreign to see sort of and hear what other branches and sister services are going through. But I did see it sort of, it was, it felt like earlier in my career, it was very different how all the branches tested and what they tested for. And then eventually over the years, it seemed like they got it right. And as because we were in a war for so long,
we had 20 years to bracket our mental health.
That's right. That's right. And so anyway, I don't mean to belabor that, but it took a long time for, I think, the military to start focusing in on not just the mental health aspect of spirituality and resiliency and all sort of the internal things, but for them to get the external things right, right? The existential issues, and that is TBI, traumatic brain injuries, and traumatic experiences that trigger PTSD, and right. And I'll tell you, and I don't normally tell this to anybody because it's really none of their business. But I am diagnosed, and I'm sure I'm not that I'm not the only one in this room that shares this. But and I think I expressed it to you is I am diagnosed with PTSD as well. And I always thought when I was going through the ranks and through the processes and through the pre and post deployments and assessments and everything. And by the way, there's 2 deployments I haven't even talked about yet.
We'll get there.
But so I have about 2.5, 3 years of direct deployment experience, and that's not include weapons, WT, all these other deployments and TDYs and everything else to support. But where I think it was, you sort of saw this divergence of service and what they were, what they were testing for again, so. But I always thought about the PTSD part is like, oh, that's not me. Right, like
that's someone else.
That's someone, right?
Yeah. When that first started becoming an issue in the early 2000s, and they labeled it PTSD,
right?
Which I don't like the D, but that's a different story.
Right. Understood.
They had a poster that they put up in the VA centers for people that were
I know where this is
checking
going.
out, and on that, the thing was basically the size of a door.
Okay.
With all the symptoms
I don't mean to laugh.
Post-traumatic
No.
stress. And some of that stuff is, you would catch every single drop of water in the ocean with that list.
Understood.
Because some of that stuff was wild.
Interesting. Well, can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
What do you think was the purpose? And here, let me. I'll give you a little caveat of what I believe to some degree. As in particular, I don't think it's just the military. For example, and this is why I think this is. I just had a mental health appointment yesterday, an online virtual thing with the VA. Which, by the way, you want to get me all fired up, hot and bothered? Let's talk about the VA. All right. I'm thankful that it's there. We can do way better. And so anyway, sort of as the sort of culture over the last 10 years is shifting into this sort of uncharted space of like genderism and all these other things, right? Neurodiversity.
Yes.
And I'm not saying there isn't some, science. I think that, we're all there's a huge spectrum of people and how they, all the stuff, right? And so, but I think that when we started categorizing and diagnosing everything, even if it was just a common, normal human experience, we started diagnosing that, and we started treating it with pharmaceuticals.
We talked
about
this on our drive down.
Oh, really?
I think
the over medicalization
Absolutely.
Of mental health. Yeah.
Yes.
Going back to that list, the original door-sized poster. I think a lot of that had to do with one, media coverage.
Sure. Right.
Because this is 2005, 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys are already on deployments 3, 4, 5.
Sure. Right.
And the issues are starting to populate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's media coverage of that. What's going on with our soldiers?
Sure.
And I think that list was based on one, raw data.
Uh-huh.
They didn't have data in place to really narrow it down quickly enough.
Sure. Understood.
And so that lack of data created a huge net.
Yes, that's what we do.
And that then that huge net caught people that, for better or worse, some of them got benefits that they didn't need.
Sure.
But on the other side of that coin, that helped narrow down the focus to catch the right people.
I think there's
100%.
also one other major factor that needs to be taken into consideration. I think there is still culturally and societally a huge sense of guilt that we feel over what we did to our Vietnam vets.
100%.
And so we were kind of primed to be in the right place to help, even if we didn't quite know what we were dealing with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true too.
May I in fact, I don't think there's a single thing I disagree with you at all. That one I talk about quite regularly. And when I meet Vietnam vets, and they're still around, and they're,
we've talked to some. Yeah.
and they're still struggling for what I believe is rightfully their claims, right? And they went through it, so I think to your point, there was a very large overcorrection, and again, I would rather have an overcorrection than and capture folks that maybe they don't, I guess, technically meet their criteria and get benefits, than to not get the benefits of the people that actually need it. Right. Yeah. And that's what I mean about the VA is I'm so thankful that's there for people, but oh my goodness, can we do better? It is a system that is, I think, far too large to manage. And that's just, I think, where the problems lie. And I think if we were to be able to privatize it someday.
We're hitting on something again.
Okay.
The bureaucracy.
Oh, the bureaucracy. Dun, dun, dun.
I hear that you don't like the bureaucracy.
You're right. And I think I want to help the bureaucracy. If they must exist, then I am all in to help them be value added to the people that they're supposed to serve. And if they can't do that, we need to either fix that or find something different. That's it. That's my marker. Yeah. I'm not pro. Some folks would label me as a door kicker in the bureaucracy, but I'm not interested in tearing things down for the sake of doing it. I don't have that time. I don't have that interest. But if we're paying tax dollars and providing a promise of service to our community, our citizens, our veterans, and every other demographic that is served by them, and they're not being served, well, I don't know about you. That's unacceptable, right?
I don't think that's necessarily just a VA thing.
It's certainly not.
I think we should, whether it's in our personal lives or our professional lives or in our government systems, we should always be looking for a way to do something better.
Absolutely. Yeah. We should. I always say this. We should always be in a state of reform.
Yeah.
Whether it be law enforcement, VA, our own lives, right? I agree.
Yeah. Or we could call it refinement, because reform is a word that can put people's hackles up. But we should always be refining.
I agree.
Yeah.
I will tell you, some of them, though, not to split hairs, some of them are so bad that, just brute force reform and radical. And I use that term.
The hacksaw, right?
Sometimes, right? It just comes down to, it really does. It just comes down to, are we serving the people the way that we promised and is required by law? Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the marker.
Getting back on course a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
At what point, because after your first 2 enlistments, you were at the 10-year mark.
Correct.
At what point did you say, okay,
we're doing this?
I guess, because that 10-year mark that's the hump.
That is.
Once you get over
For
that,
us, too.
there's really no. It's hard to turn back from that point.
It is.
So, at what point did you say, "This is it. We're in for the long haul"?
I think, very good question, and I think that's a universal for all services. That 10-year mark is that it's the point of no return, right? As I always describe it.
You still see people at like,
Oh, sure.
12, 13 years are
Punch,
like,
right?
okay,
I get it.
I'm
but
done.
generally speaking,
Yeah.
right? You're halfway through, and I think much of it has to do with retirement, right? That high 3, which I'm guessing you're under as well. I am too. I benefit from that greatly. If it wasn't for that high 3 retirement, we wouldn't be here right now. That retirement, even though it's not a lot of money, it's created opportunities I otherwise never would have had. And I can largely thank that for at least the financial capability of me running for this office, and for school board as well, and previously. But it was, like you said, I think the question is actually the answer is actually in your question. It was about that 10-year mark, and it was a lot to do with family at this point. Like I said, I wanted to, but we didn't have our daughter until I was 31 years old. And my marker for me, I actually had a marker. I wanted to be at E6 before we had a child, right? Because I wanted to be, for me, E5 was, good money, and it wasn't really that much difference, but it was I noticed the differences in the staff sergeants and the tech sergeants, that the tech sergeants were committed. They were all in, right? Yeah. The staff sergeants was still like, I'm not sure. They were the ones that would typically hit, punch about 12, 13 years. If they were, you would rarely ever see a tech do that. And so I just, in my mind, somehow, made that a marker for me. And so, my wife and I, once, we were married 2 or 3 years, and then I had made tech pretty quick. And then when we decided to have our daughter, that's when I knew that was, this was it. We're going to pursue it. We're almost there, right? We're on the downside of the hill, and it's absolutely. I am so thankful that we made that decision.
Since you knew then that it was going to be a career, and you were already on the downside, at what point did you know? And we've talked about this with other guests. Once you know.
Sure.
So when did you know that it was time to hang it up?
When the Air Force moved me, essentially against my own desires. I don't tell most people this because it's like it just adds like a part of the story that's just I have to over-explain to make sense. You understand. Air Force has a thing they like to do is where they like to send people to bases they don't want to go to at the very butt end of their career. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those guys. And then, to be honest, right? So you're laughing. Do you have a story like that too? Or no? A lot of them? Absolutely. So, please, I'd love to hear yours.
No. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, but I'd love to hear yours too, because it's always interesting to me. So I was just a little nuanced. So I was at Shaw. I was about 17 years in the Air Force, 18 years in the Air Force, and I don't know if y'all have this, but we have what they call a 7-day option. That means if you're within at the time, and they changed it now because it was just bad for people. But the 7-day option would allow an airman that was in 12 months of either separation or retirement to not accept the assignment, but they had to retire or separate. Right, that was your option. Either you take the assignment, you stay in, or you don't take the assignment and you get out.
You drop papers. Yeah.
Correct. This assignment, it was to Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi, and I have it was absolutely beneficial to me spiritually. I was away from my family, but I was there for probably. I was there for 12 months, and when I got this assignment, first off, when this assignment came through. Okay, I think our food is here. Should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay. Yes.
All right.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
So as we were winding down, we were talking about your choice to retire. Mm-hmm. So let's just kind of pick up wherever we left off.
Okay. Okay. So, well, I knew, the Air Force had sent me to Columbus Air Force Base. I was, and I'll quicken the story some. This assignment was given to, it's a very difficult assignment to fill. And so it went through the channels of ammo senior NCOs across the globe. And when I was told, the position's called Munitions Accountable Systems Officer. It's a MESO for short, and it's hard to. You have to have certain experiences, certain rank, all this other certifications, and so it's a very small pool of people that can be chosen to do it. And fortunately and unfortunately, I was in the position to do that. And so, harking back to that 7-day option, when I talked to our Air Force functional managers about this particular assignment, when I got it, I was the first senior NCO to not be able to turn the assignment down.
Okay.
Because I was outside of that timeline,
Yep.
that 12-month period I talked about to be able to do the 7-day option retirement. And so I didn't have any compelling reason. Personally, I did, but I didn't have any technical compelling reason to not take the assignment. And so I took it. My family stayed in Sumter. I went to Columbus for a year, and I retired out of there. And so really the Air Force made the decision for me.
Yeah.
Forced your hand a little bit.
A little bit. And I'm sort of glad they did, because at that point I was just sort of ready to hang it up anyway and do something else.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. I mean, when you know.
And that was it.
Yeah.
When I got that assignment, I knew.
Yeah.
I was going to do my job to the very last day, and that's why I hope that I probably failed at that. But
When you were a geo bachelor, you're probably working out twice a day.
oh yeah, well actually it was probably. In fact, I was drinking more than I was all. I was drinking more,
Yeah,
and
fair enough.
So but that's what spiritually, it was very good for me, because it was sort of my metaphorical walk into the desert, to figure it all out, and I was removed from my family. It gave me a lot of time to really just focus on what I wanted to do with my life and where I wanted to go and the changes I wanted to make. And so, in a way, I really feel that was God telling me, "You're up. You have some choices to make." And I feel like I made the best decisions I could. And certainly, sitting in this office right now is an example of that. But it allowed me to find that purpose, and I think that's as veterans and really as human beings, we're motivated by purpose. And as you know, a lot of folks, when they separate, and remember, very beginning of this conversation, we talked about that supervisor told me, don't let the military just entirely define you. A lot of folks have problems with that. They do that. And then when they get out, they don't know how to function. They lose their purpose and everything else. And that was something I was always cognitive of, and I was very afraid of, to be honest. And so this allowed the school board. Actually, I won my school board race 7 days after I retired.
Oh, nice.
So, in fact, I was on terminal leave while I was campaigning.
Very
so, you want to talk about timing?
Very cool.
It was a nonpartisan race, so I was able to do it legally. I would have never done it if it wasn't. The Hatch Act would have prevented me from it. But
Right.
Anyway, so it really feels like my life has been one step after another, one opportunity after another, and it's just I guess I'm just crazy enough to believe in myself enough to actually walk through that door of opportunity, and we're here now.
So, you just talked about it. Yeah. You were on retirement leave and you were running for school board.
That's correct.
And then you were only, I think you said earlier during the break, you were halfway through your school board term when you ran for the state senate.
That is correct.
And now you're,
What?
9 months?
9 months into a 4-year term.
Yeah, 9 months into a 4-year term. So, about 3 years, just under 3 years into your political, career. What things from your time in the military have you found useful in the public service sector? Whether it's focus, mission, drive, resilience,
Absolutely. Well, great question. All of the above. I found that, and this is the great thing about the military, and I say this often, and this doesn't mean that there are absolutely stellar and fantastic public servants who have never served in the military, right? I know people that have never spent a day in uniform that would outpace me in my service, 7 days out of 7. And so it's not to disparage anybody else, but it is to say that the military, what I found, is a concentration of talent. And we hold ourselves to an extremely high level of accountability to a degree that most people probably wouldn't function really well, because it is such a, and again, this is generalization from my experience, but I think the military, I think it's just a universality, is that we value forthrightedness, we value competency, we value proficiency, as you stated earlier.
And as you move up the chain, that refinement process happens.
Correct. And so I think all of that, the trials, the tribulations, the friendships, the travel, the experience, the rank, a big one is the professional development that we have to go through as military
Sometimes
members.
just physical toughness, just being uncomfortable. So many people don't ever really experience
being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that is something I've always lived that way, because I've always been uncomfortable. Like, being comfortable is actually, when I talked about how if I'm always looking for another fight, it's because that.
Yeah, sometimes not even on purpose.
That's right. And so, and I'm sort of facetious, but, there's always improvement area. And that's what I mean is ready for a fight. Is I'm not wanting to go after people. I want to go after problems. And I think once so all of the above on that, and more. And I think if you really harness it, it can take you places that you could only dream of, by evidence of me sitting here right now. Yeah. If I didn't believe in myself and have that confidence that was forged in sometimes blood and sometimes fear and sometimes uncertainty and then oftentimes accomplishment and achievement, I would have never had the audacity to run against a extremely tenured senator with all the statistics and statistics on his side, but it's all that was baked into the cake over a 20-year span, and it gave me the ability to just run at a problem as relentlessly as I could, with the uncertainty that it may not pan out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But what it did is give me the confidence to take a swing.
Yeah.
And I did, and we made contact.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
It does.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So, a little hard scrabble.
Let's do it.
Growing up in situation, being a Carny.
Being a Carny.
Having
so many Carny questions.
Yeah, so many Carny questions. Having a setback at MEPS, but kind of overcoming that.
Yeah.
Going to the edge of the world in Alaska.
Oh yeah.
And everything in between.
Mm.
Would you do it all again?
I would, without question. There might be some variances in my choices. I'm not, to be honest. I'm not sure if I would have stayed in the munitions technology career field as long as I did. I think there was probably some greater personal and professional opportunities in other places. But if you got to consider this, and it's not about winning an election. It's about being able to help people. As I spoke with y'all earlier, is I had to overcome to get to the seat. I won by 1%, 1.2%, which has kept us 0.2% outside of an automatic recount. Over 50,000 votes cast, and I won by 660 some odd votes. So when I say that, if all the stars wouldn't have aligned, and that means having at least a minimally adequately competent candidate, I think I was at least that. Having the experiences I had, having the ability to, having the Air Force retirement, the support network, all that stuff. This would have never panned out. And again, this is not about that title. It's about what I can do with that title. It's how far I can reach into the community and help people, and not just in the community, but into history. Right? And we know this, and I've heard you gentlemen say this on numerous occasions today. Just in other words, there's a whole lot of people out there that's been left behind, right? In some ways, it may be some of their own doing. In some ways, there's systemic things there. In some ways, the opportunities were never really, the bootstrap, pick yourself up. Some people don't have bootstraps. Some of our kids today, alive right now in Sumter and Clarendon and other places, they have been dealing with generational poverty and dysfunction and those things. The only, and this breaks my heart, and I was one of them, the only example of a successful person they might see is their bus driver or their teacher at school, and that's if their parents make them go to school. And yes, it's illegal for them not, but you see the point, right? Mm-hmm. We have to example and model that behavior, what we want our children to follow. And me coming from that, and I'm not special. There's a lot of people come from that world and make it other places. But having this and showing people that you can come from there and not let that define you, and you can still achieve and you can still go out and do good in the world, that's what I hope of more than anything else, that people can look at my life and say, well, if that knucklehead can do it, I can do it. So that's it.
Yeah.
So one last question before we move on to the next. But your twin brother,
oh yes,
enlisted before you.
Correct.
Also in the Air Force. Twins, and I'm sure Carny twins are probably much more so.
Well, actually, almost. He worked one season. Couldn't. Sorry, Patrick.
Couldn't cut it.
Well, he has a problem people telling him what to do. Mm. I have a little more tolerance for authority. So
there is a bond. An unspoken and sometimes psychic bond between twins.
Carnies?
There's some science data to back that stuff up.
Sure.
And I imagine it's stronger between Carny's twins. even if one was successful.
We should study that.
That bond is stronger, I'm sure.
Sure.
Would he do it all again?
I think so.
From enlisting right after 9/11 to the point that he got out.
I think, talking to him, and again, we all have our own journeys, right?
Just using your psychic Carny bond.
Yes, I think he'd do it all over again, but I think he'd make a couple different decisions. I think he would have stayed in active duty rather than separate after one term. And then he joined the South Carolina Air National Guard right after that, did that for about 10 to 12 years. So he had probably 16 years of actual direct service. And unfortunately, he left a little later, the obviously different retirement structures and all this. And so he wasn't able to reach that marker. And so I don't know if that's a regret of his, but I think it certainly would be easier for him if he would have the military retirement. But I think where he's at, he is doing a fantastic job in his own way. He's as accomplished and as doing right by his family and his community as I am trying to. And so I don't think, not to answer for him directly, but I don't think that he would change much. So
see, I thought Dan there was going to tip our hand and reveal that this entire discussion was a ruse, that we're lobbyists for the
Carny Association,
Carny Institution, and we wanted you to commission a study on twins working.
Let's do it. Okay. Can you introduce me to your leadership? Yeah, we'll have him get with my assistant. We'll schedule that.
Okay, all right. We're gonna pivot to the free fire area.
All right.
We're gonna do the free fire area a little bit differently this time. Normally, what we would do is we would, we'd say our farewells, and then we would have about a half an hour discussion, kind of
usually eat a quick meal.
Yeah,
okay.
Usually a quick meal. But we would sum up, what we just spent the last hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long, talking with you about, and we would give some of our thoughts on your experiences and things like that.
Very
and
cool.
then we would pivot to the free fire area. But because we're on the road, and whenever we're on the road, we do tend to do things a little bit differently.
Adapt and overcome, right?
That's right.
This time, we are going to include our guest
in
the free fire area.
I am not afraid. Let's do this.
You should be. You should be terrified. Shaking your tiny little cabbage-swung Carny hands.
So we've mentioned multiple times that I think all three of us would agree we all are always looking for some kind of fight or some kind of conflict that could increase our dopamine hits within our brains because as particularly as men, we kind of crave that at some level, whether we want to admit
That's
it or
right.
not. So
I agree.
the question is, for the purposes of personal and, more importantly, political grievances settling, should we bring back dueling?
That's a good question. Personally, so I have to answer personally, I have zero problems with it. How we frame that legally might be challenging.
Fair enough.
But also on the other side, obviously, Andrew Jackson, right?
Old Hickory.
Old Hickory.
The great.
How many people did he shoot?
Oh,
Ben shot.
With a headshot, one. He got one headshot, dead shot, and said I would have killed that guy if he had shot me through my own brain. I mean, Andrew Jackson is one of my personal.
He also killed a lot of people after the War of 1812 had ceased.
Sure.
He killed a lot of people across the course of his life.
Sure.
But
yes.
So, he was very successful at dueling.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, I think, and actually a serious part of this answer, I'm not even kidding about this. I think when, it's not about firearms, it's about accountability and respect. And if I think we are in such a decadent society where we're all Facebook warriors. We're 99.9% of the people that says this stuff online, they would never say to someone's face because they're just genuinely cowards. That's fine, but I think as Mike Tyson said, you're
bring it back.
Yes, your plans crumble as soon as you get punched in the face, and I think the accountability, the other side of disrespect is could be a duel, could be a rap to the Jack Johnson, right? For lack of a better.
I think bringing back dueling would bring back accountability.
So do I.
If whether personally or I would really love to see it in politics. I'm not saying pistols at dawn. Yeah. I'm not saying pistols at dawn. But maybe
it's so early.
Maybe pugil
sure,
sticks,
yeah, understood,
or something like there are a lot of different ways to duel.
They're non-lethal.
However, the throwing of the gauntlet or the smacking of the glove across the face would be required by law in my system.
Interesting.
But
we can file a bill.
It takes away just the frivolous rhetoric that means nothing.
That's right.
Because you can't just say whatever you want.
That's right.
Without being held accountable for it.
And that's a serious part of it.
You see a lot of people in public office across the board, 100%. Across all the parties.
Absolutely.
State, federal, local, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. They all love to run their mouth because what's the worst that's going to happen?
Right. Somebody yells back at them.
Yeah, somebody yells back at them or somebody cuts off their microphone.
Sure.
Or somebody, releases that hidden video to the public, whatever it is.
Sure.
But if you have to risk getting shot or getting scarred up with dueling sabers, because that's what the Germans used to do. They used to wear their dueling scars as a badge of honor.
I didn't know that.
They had a badge of honor. I can't remember what the name of it is, but
I can't believe we're using the Germans.
Yeah, if you look at like all these World War I generals, they all had these crazy facial scars.
I have never really noticed that. I'm gonna pay attention to that.
No surprise.
Yeah.
The Kaiser outlawed it.
Sure. Oh, right. Understood.
I'm sure that he wasn't very good at dueling.
No, but, absolutely.
I think it would bring back accountability.
That's right. Well, I think I agree, and I think what it does is our founding fathers told us that. I've read our documents. I've studied formally. I am no scholar in Constitution in our founding documents that got us to our Constitution, but I am aware of them. And it was stated, Ben Franklin, I believe, is that that republic was formed for a religious and just people, and that. Not necessarily that it's a theological state, but it's a moral state. It's a state of people that honor
that can self-govern themselves.
Governance, honor, dignity, and so this dueling question, I think it comes down to honor and dignity. It's preserving your own and those of your neighbors. And if there's an offense so great that justifies it, it's like going to a state where firearms are wide open. The only legal law-abiding citizens can carry them anywhere, almost without limitation. That has a sort of an equalizing effect. If you don't know who's out there carrying a gun, that changes the dynamic of how you engage with your right?
Your mission analysis.
Well, it's and to that point, there was a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, there was a vacation Bible school that almost turned into a mass shooting, and 2 members of the staff and somebody that just drove up outside. I don't know if he was there for drop off or pickup
in Texas, wasn't it?
I'm not sure if it was in Texas or not, but I mean they have the video of it because it was being live streamed on Facebook. The camp was
okay.
That guy never even got a chance to take a shot because he was taken down immediately by 2 people inside and 1 person that came up
and the one he didn't even know about.
Yeah,
I appreciate. I mean,
and do you think he would have done that if he had known that 3 people within 50 feet of him were going to have firearms?
No, absolutely not.
Nope.
There was several years, that's probably 10 years ago now, and of course the media didn't touch it because it's counter-narrative to the guns are bad, okay, right? There was a young man, security guard, in a mall active shooter situation in Oregon or Washington or someplace over on the West Coast. And he was, I think he was early 20s. He had, so he was proficient he was a security guy. And so he was licensed and he was proficient with a pistol. And this young deranged kid came in.
I remember which one you're talking about. I don't remember him being a security guard, though. I thought he was there shopping with his girlfriend.
I think he was a security guard that was shopping with his girlfriend, right? If that's a profession, he was in security. Now, I believe that's what but he was there shopping with his girlfriend. He wasn't there on duty. But that said, when the shooter came in, fired off some AR-15, some rounds into the air, the first thing that coward saw was this young man drawing down on him in good cover and concealment. And so in that coward's mind, and that's the problem with, and we all know this when we profile and learn about active shooters and lone wolves, they're absolute cowards, right? Mm-hmm. They want to do as much carnage as they can and then take themselves out so no one gets closure, right? The moment that they are that
much resistance.
That their fantasy is disrupted with reality, and that young man with that pistol was the reality. He was the sheepdog facing down the wolf. Mm-hmm. That wolf cowered and then went into the stairwell and I think killed himself without firing a single shot at anyone. Yeah. So just the very presence of that fire, and the young man didn't fire a single shot. It was just the presence was a deterrence.
Changes the calculus.
It changes the status quo. Calculus, absolutely. So, but we don't talk about those, do we? That is, we need strong men, selfless men that are willing to fight for honor and dignity, and even ideology. I want our young men to be idealistic, but for the right ideology.
It just needs to be channeled properly.
Correct.
And all that toxic masculinity. Well, the inverse to that is good men and good men.
Yes.
And some women, but
correct.
Good men.
That's right.
Is what stops bad men.
That's correct.
And good men are successful duelists.
I don't know if there's much left to say on the topic.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that.
Jeff,
yes,
thank you so much. This has been great. We've been working on it for 9 months, a year, almost quite some time.
Thank you.
I'm glad that we could finally
Me too.
get it done. You have given us so much of your time today. We really appreciate it. And it's been great.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. And again, it's been such a pleasure meeting you gentlemen and for what you're doing, highlighting the stories of veterans, sharing it with the world, because I think not necessarily me, because my story's boring, but others that you speak with, I think it can give wisdom, and it makes people, even non-veterans, maybe some inspiration that they can do more, that maybe their problems aren't so big or insurmountable. And again, when it comes down to it, we just want to do good in the world, right? And I appreciate what you're doing.
You would be surprised at how many people that we've talked to that said, "Oh, I don't have a story, or oh,
I
it's
bet.
boring.
Sure.
Like, no, it's not. It's really very interesting.
Well,
That's right.
well, thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is just something I try to do. It's just, keep focused. We're in the right place. And if I don't, I would go berserk, man.
Yeah.
And that's why you will never succeed in politics.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm telling you. You know the thing.
And I mean that in the nicest
No,
way possible.
I know this. People, you asked me, I think I'm probably in the next, I got 3 years on a 4-year term, 3.5 years left. I don't know how viable of a candidate I'll be in 4 years because I think I've done pissed everybody off. Everybody on all sides and all corners at all levels. So, and I'm quite okay with this. So, I don't do friends and family discounts for people.